Some say it's not easy to be a young man in today's economy. Others say it's not easy to be a woman in a man's marketplace. In this episode, you'll meet a mother and son team who don't care what anyone says. They've created a new paradigm partnership based on old-fashioned values to raise capital, invest in real estate, and encourage Main Street to reclaim the American dream. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Main Street Capitalist Show. I'm your host, Russell Gray, and today I'm in studio in Scottsdale, Arizona with a couple of very good friends of mine, and you're going to love their story because they were doing something that I think a lot of people are missing out on, and that is you've got one generation working hand in hand with another generation, and there's been a lot of generational divide. I created the Raising Capitalists Foundation as part of a mission to encourage parents and children to start businesses together. When I was a young man, I always had a dream of working with my father, and he and his brother were both pretty good businessmen. My uncle, my dad's younger brother, taught me sales, and I ended up realizing that he was really good in sales. My dad was really good in ops. I saw some synergy there, and I just wondered, why don't we start a family business? But we never did. Well, later in life, I grew up, had children of my own, and I had a chance to start a business, and I brought my children in through that business. It was an extension of their homeschooling experience, and it was a fantastic time. There was some pressure. I can't tell you that it was all sunshine and unicorns. It was a little bit of pressure from time to time, but I think that sometimes that healthy tension can actually make relationships stronger. It certainly made my children stronger, and I don't really have any regrets about doing it. So today I'm welcoming into the studio a lady who has actually accepted the position of coming on and becoming my chief of staff, and she's just getting onboarded. And then her son, Michael, who is a young entrepreneur and is actually one of the founding members of the Fountainhead Mastermind that Adam Taggart and I put together. So we'll tell you about both those things in just a minute. But first of all, let's welcome to the studio, Marianna Rebelo.
Thank you so much, Russell. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. I think let's talk a little bit about how we met. It's one of these strange situations. So I have been teaching for a number of years how to win funds and influence people. It's a sales training workshop. I have been coaching capital raisers on how to have really effective one-on-one conversations. I had good success when I was raising capital. I'm kind of getting back in that game again, which is nice. And I had a lot of success training other people how to do it. And so I did this class, and I'd given some tickets away to a person who had attended it before, and it turned out you were in their mastermind. So talk a little bit about what you're doing today in terms of your personal investing, and I know you're making this business transition. And then let's just talk a little bit about what attracted you to what I'm doing and why you decided we should work together.
So as far as the investing piece of it, I've literally been doing what the playbook has been saying. You know, the 401k, just the standard things, nothing really exciting. But I have since moved in the last couple of years into multifamily syndication and investing through multifamily real estate because I just realized that, 3 years ago, we realized that there's got to be a better way to make money than my 401k, my retirement plan, and real estate just happened to be it. As far as your winning funds, that was a no-brainer for me. When Michael and I sat in the room, you were talking about Main Street. We were literally talking about that on the way up, that Main Street deserves more. We need to get back from Wall Street. And then there you were, talking about the same thing that we were talking about. It was like literally divine intervention. We just looked at each other as if, did this man bug the car on the way up? So that's just a short snippet of it.
So today, you had the W-2 job. You were plowing your spare time and your extra money into your investing, into your portfolio. Along the way, you became a mother and raised a remarkable young man. Tell us a little bit about Michael before we get a chance to talk to him ourselves.
So Michael has always been a great listener, always a great observer. So for years, I would work at my desk typing away. I'd be on phone calls with customers, phone calls with team members, phone calls with account owners. And even though my son was sitting behind me as a young tot, maybe playing on the Xbox or reading or comic books, whatever, he was always listening. And I didn't realize it until years later when I heard him talking to people on the phone. And I would look at him and I would say, where did you learn that? And he said, all those years of sitting behind you while you were click, click, click with your nails on the keyboard and hearing you on the phone, he says, I was behind you for so many years. He says, I learned just through being around you. And then he just always found him, I always found that he could talk to anybody, but I also never excluded Michael. I never went anywhere where my son wasn't welcome. I didn't go to the parties that, you can't bring your children. I didn't go. I wanted to spend time with my son. I didn't go on a vacation by myself unless he could come with me. I wanted to spend time with my son. I knew I only had, 18 summers with him, 17 summers with him. I wanted to make sure that it counted. So he was always around me, and he became, and then, a lot of times people say that's what I made. And that's not necessarily true, because I've seen some really good parents have kids that are really challenging. But I was also a tough Mediterranean mother. For those people who know that what a Mediterranean mother is like, you raise your child with respect. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. You don't talk back. And he learned that very quickly, and he was always respectful. And he's an old soul, so he enjoys talking to people of all generations because he feels that he can learn something from everybody. And he's just awesome.
Well, there's a lot there, and I want to unpack it a little bit, but I want to bring Michael into the conversation. So, Michael, welcome to the show, first of all, and just tell folks a little bit about where you're at in life right now. You're a young guy, what you're working on, what you're doing, and where you hope to be going.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Russell, thank you for bringing us on the show. It's a pleasure. And just to kind of touch upon what's been happening in my life recently. I mean, when just going on the entrepreneurial route at 17 as a junior in high school, it was a pretty, big move for me to decide I want to do this. I've always had that entrepreneurial grit, that spirit, and I wanted to develop a business because I feel like, I could create something, have something of my own, like ownership, and then tried the stock market a little bit. We can go into that story a little bit, but I always wanted to deal with something with money, to teach people to build wealth where I don't have to work for the dollar. It can work for me now. So it's like, all right, we're both working for each other. Then segueing into multifamily real estate and capital raising with mom, we currently have a decent portfolio of 216 apartment units. Going to add that more because now that I have my business partner full time. But yeah, right now I'm doing a lot of podcasting, especially with you, mentoring under you, raising capital, and just trying to teach as many people as I can in my generation and older to just bring more awareness to Main Street because the education system doesn't teach it. I mean, it's not really, I would say, in the mainstream media. And I feel like it's my duty and my responsibility to kind of be the town crier about it. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Love that. So your mom, first of all, you're here with your mom, and that is just very unique. I don't need to tell you that. And she talked about you being an old soul. And I was an entrepreneur fairly early in life. I was taking real estate classes as a senior in high school. I started my first business, bought my first property before I was 19 years old. And I made a lot of mistakes. Like I said in the opening, I was interested in having my folks work with me, but they weren't there. They were off doing their own things, and I was having to figure things out on my own. And, I look at you, and you're a little bit of an anachronism. A little bit of an anomaly, right? There's not a lot of young men that would proudly run around with their mom. When my kids were working with me, it was, I'm the man, and I have my daughters primarily working with me. Later, I had my son working with me to a degree. And I know my son always felt like he didn't want to be in my shadow. He wanted to be his own man. He wanted to stand on his own 2 feet. He wanted to make his own accomplishments. And I had respect for that, but at the same time, it was a reflection, I think, of what's happened in our society, where there's a divide between young and old, and not just kids getting pulled out of school and not being able to spend time with their parents. You were fortunate to listen and learn. My kids are actually pretty good salespeople because they've been around me and they know the what I call the how to win funds framework. They know how to have a conversation that actually is effectively persuasive. And they're just naturally good at sales, but they're not naturally good. They're good because they learned to speak it because they were in that environment. And so now here you are as a young man, and there's other young men I'm sure that you associate with. How do you deal with, or do you deal with this idea that, I'm proudly running around with my mom? Do guys give you, a little bit of crap about that, or how do you handle that?
I love that question. So I do get the skepticism every once in a while where it's like, you are? But at the same token, I'm okay with it because they don't understand my perspective, and I'm all right with it. I'm not going to judge them for it because mom is actually the ace in the card deck for me because she's my unfair advantage. Why? You touched upon this earlier where as a toddler and, starting to grow up, I've been listening to her on the phone, how she would construct emails, how she would handle problems, damage control. And I guess I subconsciously adopted that. When her and I would go through homework, she would break down problems with me, the tone that she had, just breaking it down piece by piece by piece. And I'm like, subconsciously, I think I came to the realization that she's the perfect business partner that I need, especially starting a business at 19, fully fledged 19. I don't have a lot of credibility. I don't have a track record, but if I can leverage mom's experience in business and in personal dealings, I can be mentored under her, both personally and business-wise, and I can use that to my advantage. Now, mom is mom and dad for me, which I'm proud to say. And with mom's experience and expertise, I definitely don't want to say, I'm going to go my own way because I've learned so much and cultivated it. And I'm trying to at least spread the message where it's okay to work with your parents because they know a lot more than you do, especially as a young individual. Do I get the skepticism? Yes. But when I start to unfold it, especially being raised Mediterraneanly, if that's even a word, but it all comes down to the point of you stick with family, you listen to your elders, you leverage their experience, wisdom, and expertise, and you just build something out of it. So that's at least my mindset and perspective of the situation.
So, Marianna, as a mother and trying to empower a young man to be a man, how do you balance mothering and smothering and being a partner and letting this young eagle fly? How do you manage that? How do you know when to move in, when to move out, when to let him be? There's got to be times when you're not sure. There's got to be times when you need to let him flounder, but you want to save him. I know I've had that. How do you handle that?
That's a great question.
It's like the most important question every parent needs to figure out.
So my son knows that I have this sign language.
Yep.
So there's a scene in The Lion King with Simba.
Yeah.
Where they bring Simba out. And every once in a while, I'll look at my son and I'll go, he'll be like, oh no, what did you do? Sometimes I'll put him talking to somebody that he wasn't expecting to talk to, and it could be very intimidating. And I put him out there. I've done it with you and him.
Sure.
Where he's on a call with you and he's like, are you going to stay? No, nope, you're fine. And I'll let him go because if he flounders, he's going to flounder with somebody that he can trust. Somebody that's going to, course correct with him, somebody that could be a mentor. There are other times I hear him on a call with a broker and I see him floundering and I let him flounder and he gets off the call and he says, that was awful. I failed miserably. Okay. What did you learn? I'm very much go ahead and try it. I even will let him try it when I know he's going to fall flat on his face. Because he has to know what that feeling is like to be able to say, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. Because it's one thing to tell your child, don't do that because it won't work. It's another to let them do that. It doesn't work and then come back and go, okay, that didn't work. It's no different than coaching in gymnastics, for example. There are times as a gymnast when I was really young, my coach would say to me, well, if you try to land on the beam that way, it may not end well. But, of course, you're really young and you're going to try it anyway. And then, one leg is on one side of the beam and one leg's on the other side of the beam. And you realize, okay, he was right. Right. Everybody in the audience, you probably
learned.
Lesson learned. Yeah. So sometimes that's what it's got to be. So for a parent, I would say, unless they're doing something that's going to physically harm themselves, then sometimes you just got to let them make that phone call, write that email. And if they're going to come to you and say, hey, could you just read this email, let me know how I did, that's one thing. But as long as you know the email is not going to be damaging to their reputation or the phone call is going to be damaging to their reputation, let them do it. And then when they don't get the results that they want, hopefully they're going to ask, like he does, hey, I don't think I got the results I wanted. Would you take a look at this? I don't necessarily put myself out there all the time. I will let him come to me and ask the question, unless I truly see that he's going down a rabbit hole that could again, damage his business relationship with somebody, then I'll intervene with a simple little note. I slide it over to him. He reads the note and then course corrects. So that's the best advice I would say.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys are now at a place where you're raising money from private investors, you're doing deals. And so you never want to practice brain surgery on other people's,
Correct.
money. In other words, you have to know when to step in and make sure
Correct.
the mission matters even more than his development, right? You've got to make sure that you take care of
Yes.
that capital. And so, Michael, I'm going to flip back to you because I know something that I went through, and I told my children this early. I loved it when they were young. When they were little, I was Superman. I was perfect. I was the wisest person they knew. I was the most successful person they knew. I was almost perfect. Of course, as they got older, all that glitter began to rub off. And there were two sides of that. And I'm going to come back to you, Marianna, so you can be working on this. But my son, for example, pretty good football player, way better than me. But in the beginning, he wasn't. He was just a little kid. And I began teaching him what I knew about football. I was a mediocre football player at best. I loved it, but I never was really that good. I only played for a few years. And when I realized that his talent was greater than mine and his potential was greater than mine, and I had taught him everything I knew to get out of the way and go get better coaches. At the same time, in business, there were times where my children followed me into the marketplace and believed that everything we touched was going to turn to gold. And for a little while it did. And then the great financial crisis happened, and I was on the wrong end of that. And everything failed and everybody failed and it was disastrous. I don't think in your life you've been through that kind of a business cycle yet, and I don't know if even in your relationship with your mother, your partnership with your mother, if any of the glitter has rubbed off yet. But how do you know when mom is your best answer or when you need other mentors? Like how do you do that? Like, okay, mom, that's great advice, but I'm not going to take it because I'm listening to this other person. Because again, there's you've got just not the business partner dynamic. And I've been in business partnerships for a long time and I know what that's like. You got two people that are equal. And then you've got this mother-son thing. And for a little while, mother is a goddess and she knows everything and you're a little boy. And then after a while, you're both adults. She's still mom. And she's still older and wiser in some ways, and yet you may have your 10,000 hours in something she doesn't, or you may look for somebody who's got their 10,000 hours in something she doesn't. So how do you wrestle with all of that? Because that was always complex for me, and I think it was complex for my children.
I love the complexity of this question. I'm going to unpack it into two parts. So to talk about the financial crisis, I haven't experienced a financial crisis except for COVID, but I wasn't active in business during that time. But I saw that my mother and a lot of other of my friends' parents struggled through that time, whether it was getting toilet paper or eggs, and then, going out and making sure everyone is safe, and, the market going up and down, and just pure chaos. And at the time, I wasn't very aware because I was remote learning. I'm like, I get to be home, lounge in my pajamas all day. This is great. But when pandemic at least started to calm down and quiet down, I realized that there was a lot financially that we got hurt with. And then transitioning into 2023, I was on, I believe, summer vacation. And this is kind of the catalyst of what started the business and my Main Street mission. Mom comes home and I'm sitting in the living room playing Xbox. I think I'm on a call with one of my friends, summer break. And she says, hey, we need to talk. Now, me being a teenage male, that can mean a lot of things. So I'm like, oh no. So she's like, grab a notebook, grab a pen. We're going to sit down at the dining room table and I'm going to teach you about compound interest and how our accounts are working. And I'm like, okay. And she's walking me through how a 401k works, how a Roth IRA works, how a CD works, what happened in 2008. And then she walked me through this to say, pretty much in summary, I was supposed to be making 5% on the money that she invested for me when I was an infant. And in fact, we were making 1.25% because it was still the interest from all the way back then. And I remember the words that she said to me. She's like, I cannot believe I've been so financially illiterate and I haven't given you a financial future to lean on for college and just your future in general. And I didn't accept that because I was like, no, you have taught me to this very point on to manage finances, be frugal, be pragmatic. So not all is lost. Let's go to the drawing board and develop this out. And I realized that I know my mom isn't the only one that's suffering from this. It was like this subconscious lingering feeling that despite 2008 and, COVID, if this issue was happening way before then and factoring COVID and other market events, what else has happened to those bank accounts? So we look at different things like oil, gold, silver, short-term, long-term rentals. We stumbled into multifamily. We took an education course and we just went with it because we realized that this is what we want to do. Bring people in together, bring Main Street together, and just get into these investments that we think BlackRock and Vanguard own. And we loved it. Now, transitioning into, I would say, leveraging experience. When we both went into multifamily and just entrepreneurship in general, this is a path that we've never even considered before. It's just raw. It's my mom and then it's me, but we're both at ground zero when going into a business like this. Mom's got business experience, I don't. So we both go back and forth. There are a lot of times where we go, I think we need someone that's been in the business a lot longer. Like, for example, capital raising. We didn't know how to capital raise. We didn't even know how to pitch somebody or even allocate an investment. So we would go to different mentors. We'd go to look at different coaching programs. YouTube University, we would do that. Take a bunch of notes, go on coaching calls, go on networking calls, and just start to brainstorm with different people that were at a higher level than us. Our main goal at the time was to be the dumbest people in the room because that's where you grow. And I think we do that often where at first we'll brainstorm to go, Mom, what do you think? Michael, what do you think? Okay, well, I think of this. And then we'll both come to the consensus that, all right, I think we need someone a little bit more oomph, business experience. So I think it's a 50-50 play where we brainstorm a little bit, then we figure out, I think we need someone with more experience. And then we leverage that experience and we grow, and then we go to the next mentor, and we just keep growing and growing and growing as we go.
There's a couple things you said in there that I want to draw attention to because I think they're really good. One is at the point where you realized that she was giving you an opportunity to be the victim. She was owning this situation. Hey, I wasn't a good steward. Hey, I haven't set you up the way I intended, and I'm sorry. And that's humility. And the challenge when a parent is humble, I know from experience, is it allows the child to step into a victim role. It's not my fault. It's my parents' fault. I'm in this situation because of them. And that's very disempowering. And so she modeled humility for you, but she also gave you an opportunity to be a victim. You didn't take the bait, which is really, really good. And so you encouraged her and then became solution focused. And I think all successful people I know are humble. They can look at a mistake, they can own a mistake, but then they immediately focus towards a solution. Now, learning how to do that by yourself is one level of development. Learning how to do that in a partnership, especially when you've got this dynamic of family, is much harder. And so you may not even be aware of some of the things that make what you guys do work, but I really want to draw attention to it because there's a lot of people out there would love to have, especially on the parent side, would love to have what you have. And I think there's a lot of young people out there that really wish older people would really invest, really care, really get involved, really spend time. They maybe don't want to admit they need it, but deep down inside they do, because life is scary. It's hard to figure out. You get somebody who's got 20, 30, 40 years on you who's willing to come alongside and help. And I want to draw out a little bit more on that humility side, because the flip side is the parent now has to realize when they're not the right answer. I had to be humble in developing my son's football. If I would have tried to be the ultimate football coach for him, he wouldn't have grown very much. I would have been a limiting factor. And the fact that both of you can come together and go, okay, neither one of us are qualified to have a good enough opinion. We have to go find somebody who is. So, Marianne, I'm going to come back to you. You've heard the things that Michael have said. This concept of parental humility and yet still being kind of a driver. Like, how do you balance that And do you ever have issues where you feel like, hey, I am qualified to have an opinion, but Michael is like, let's go get a third opinion? Do you guys have that kind of
No.
conflict? Not yet. Okay.
No. The day that Michael is talking about, it was humility, but not humility. I don't know how to explain it. It was more of, I was mad. I was really mad. I was mad that I didn't know more. I was mad that I couldn't teach my son how to break the cycle. I was mad that I was ignorant. I'm a very smart woman, but I was angry that I couldn't teach him how to get money to make more money and a lot of money. And I was determined we were going to stop that. Now, my son has always seen me as frugal. I mean, 6 years ago, my household was living on my paycheck, which at the time wasn't very much, and coupons. And he knew how frugal I was back then. So he knew I struggled. To the extent of how much I struggled, he didn't know because I didn't tell him back then. But fast forward to the 5 years when him and I were talking about, I was not going to have it. I got home and I sat him down and I said, we're going to figure this out together because this is what I was taught, which is the same thing I'm teaching you. Go to school, go to college, go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a job, save, retire. I was teaching him the same thing. And then I realized, oh, no. You need to finish high school, get educated on whatever it is that you're going to do and be very good at it. And we're going to make money. We took a notebook, we sat down and all the possible ideas we had on what we could do with income, with our money, passively. Stocks, EFTs, CDs, real estate. We had all these ideas presented to us. I said, I really want to own real estate. And then he started doing his research right there, sitting on the couch. Well, you could own a duplex, you could own a house, you could flip, you could do this. I'm like, I'm not doing that. And he's laughing, thinking about that. And then finally we settled in on multifamily. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that either. I said, but we're going to learn. So it was humility to say, I don't know how to do it, but not humility in the sense that I just put the stamp down saying, we are going to figure this out. We're going to break the cycle and you are morally obligated to be wealthy. And that's how we started on multifamily learning. So it was humble from the standpoint of, I don't know how to do this. But he did not look at it as a weakness. I didn't feel like it was a weakness. I was never afraid to say to Michael, I don't know how to do that.
Well, I'm not saying humility is a weakness. I hang around, as you know, with some of the most successful people in business and investing. And one of the things that I've noticed as I look for common traits is that they tend to be very humble, they tend to be very curious, and they tend to be very generous with their time with their wisdom, and a lot of times even with their money. They're pragmatic with their money, but they're very generous with their time and wisdom. And they're very humble. I mean, they share freely their best ideas and they receive freely good ideas. And they're always willing to examine what it is they think they know against what somebody else is saying. So those intellectual conversations happen a lot in the rooms that I'm in. As you guys know, I'm in these masterminds. We spend a lot of time because it's never about an ego. It's just trying to solve the problem. And so the flip side of this humility is ego. And the ego is, to me, where the problem is, when you need to be right for the sake of being right, where you need to be the boss because you're the boss, even though you may not have the right answer, where the idea of prestige or reputation or credit supersedes just getting the job done. And to me, that's the kiss of death when you're raising children. It's a kiss of death when you're raising capital. And investors are counting on you to be pragmatic and do what needs to be done and get help when you need it. So let's flip now, because this to me is very, very fascinating. I don't know that a lot of people talk about this stuff, but I do think that there's a big opportunity right now for baby boomers and younger, even millennials now who are having children, that are living in a world that's different. We're not creating the same type of opportunities that we did, Marianna, when you and I were younger. Mm-hmm. And so there is both an opportunity and an obligation for the older generation to help prepare the younger generation for the actual world that we have. And this is a world that really is full of opportunity for entrepreneurs, for rearranging existing resources and creating better outcomes. For example, syndication. I'm going to take somebody's balance sheet, which isn't performing well like yours wasn't, and then begin to rearrange it into asset classes and investment strategies that are more likely to produce the type of outcome they're actually trying to accomplish. And that's going to require them to learn some things and meet some people and maybe take different kinds of risks than they're familiar with. So you're taking people right now in your business. So I want to talk about your business. You have Ever Forward Capital Partners. That's the name of your business. You are a multifamily syndication business. You have two people who are the primary principals in this business. Talk about roles and responsibilities. And Michael, I'm going to go with you first. What is your role? What are your responsibilities in this partnership? And then Marianna, I'll come to you.
So for me, I'm face. That's pretty much the best way that I can explain it. What do I mean
And a
by
very
face?
handsome face, by the way. I'm sure your
I
mother
agree.
tells you
I
that
really
all the
agree.
time.
But I would say I do a lot of the social media and the branding. Exactly. Where she helps to put me out there into the public to speak our piece, to speak our story. And I'll cultivate messages. I'll reach out to people. I'll do webinars, seminars, podcasts, speaking at virtual summits or on stages. And I just start talking about the mission. And I start talking to people one-on-one or even group calls. So I'll do a lot of the networking portion, a lot of the branding, putting the business out there. I'll be raising capital. I'll be looking for deals. I love to look for deals. I love to call brokers, insurance agencies saying, hey, what do you have for me? And I'll dig because I'm always looking for new opportunities, either for someone or for ourselves, so we could therefore go back to teaching what we do best. And I think that's my best role of responsibility. I'm really the visionary. I like to envision stuff, and I like to network, brainstorm, look for deals, raise capital, fund deals, and just rebuild Middle America one apartment complex at a time, one allocation at a time, and just one person at a time. The Starfish story. Now, I'm going to touch upon Mom's role. She has this massive, infinite gallon black can of spray paint. And what do I mean by that? I have shiny object syndrome. Horrible. And I can't cure it for anything. And I'll be like, ooh, let me look at this deal. No. Yeah, spraying it. Oh, what about this deal in Indianapolis? I mean, the rent growth is great. No. Okay. Well, what about, I'm looking at New Mexico, Las Cruces. No. It completely sprays it clean right off. So she helps me to put the guardrails to make sure that if I'm raising capital, if I'm branding, or if I'm doing a podcast, I am in alignment with our values and our mission, plus what we need to do in the business and the task at hand. But I won't take Mom's thunder on that one. So those are my roles and responsibilities.
Okay, so you heard his interpretation of your role. How does that fit with your interpretation of your role? Is there anything you want to add or expand on that?
So that's pretty accurate. So I'm the matte black spray paint is if I just feel it doesn't fit our mold. Couple of things that I do also that so I do have experience with age that Michael doesn't. Obviously, you and I have that over 20 years old. I will talk to certain investors because I can relate to them better because I know what they're going through. I know what their pain points are because they were my pain points. So that's one part of what I do. The other part is I'm very specific about the business. Michael will absolutely drill here, drill here, drill here, drill here. I will tell him, Michael, drill right there. He'll drill right there. So I get him very focused. So while he's doing the face of Everforward Capital Partners, social media, emails, email drip campaigns, et cetera, I'm focusing on the business. What's happening once those leads come in? What happens once those investors start asking questions? What happens once we get that information? He has the basic fundamentals of the deal. Does it look good on paper? Now we say, okay, let's tear it apart. And my job really is let's be honest, I'm the one that tears the deals apart. I'm going to rip it to shreds until I can actually break it. Now, if I can't break it, then I'm going to bring it to another underwriter to say, hey, I haven't been able to break this deal. Break it. He'll be saying, well, it's good about it. I'm saying, break it. So I'm the very pragmatic side of it. He's shiny object syndrome. I'm pragmatic business. This is how it has to be. I need to have structure to the business. So that's really what I do. Very systematic.
Michael, have you read Sam Zell?
I have not.
So he has a book called Am I Being Too Subtle? Do you know who he is?
That I do not.
So Sam Zell, for a long time, was the multi-billionaire real estate developer, real estate investor, probably 3 or 4 times bigger than Donald Trump, but a bit of a wallflower. So equity, I believe equity properties, I can't remember, equity investment partner, something like that. And so he's passed away, but he wrote this book. And when Donald Trump became kind of a polarizing figure, I think we all know that, and became a politician and really left the real estate world behind. When I was with the real estate guys and we would want to talk about iconic real estate investors, I began studying and talking about Sam Zell, and I learned a lot from that, and a very different person and personality from Donald Trump. So Sam Zell said, everybody can see the upside in a deal. I have the ability to see the downside and still move forward. The idea is you can't handle a problem or navigate a problem or mitigate a problem you don't even acknowledge or can't see. And so there's this thing that happens inside a prudent investor that has to happen inside of a prudent investment firm, which I call healthy tension.
Yes.
And so when you disagree, because I'm sure there's times you do,
yes.
and there's just the two of you, how do you handle that, right? Does somebody say, well, I've got 51 and 49? And if you've been steamrolled and you do something you disagree with, or have you decided that we're only going to do stuff we're unanimous on? Do you have a third-party board member maybe that could come in, and even though they're not a principal in the company, they can look at the deal? Or what is the process by which, when you have to make those big, weighty decisions and you're just not seeing eye to eye, how do you handle that?
That last deal was a good example, the one that went to Colby.
Yes, go ahead, Marianna.
Yeah.
So we had a deal that Michael was, he was hell-bent on. This is a great deal. I looked at it.
I was so stubborn with that deal.
He really was very stubborn with it. This was definitely, as you would call, healthy tension, maybe even borderline unhealthy tension. I didn't see what he was seeing, and then we sent it over to another underwriter that we know that does a great job with underwriting, and he tore it apart. And he gave the long-term vision of what this is going to look like in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And by the time he was done, Michael was deflated, and he was like, okay, he didn't get angry about it. He just basically backed down and said, okay, I see it now. He could understand it. Even though he was hell-bent on this is a great deal, he himself was able to step back and say, I understand now. Didn't understand it necessarily for me, probably because I couldn't explain it well enough, but the underwriter could. So I think that's probably the best description of that particular deal.
Yeah, and removing the hell-bent part, right? When we look at deals, and if I find something that comes across my desk and it's something probable, in fact, I'm looking at one right now, and with everything we're taking on, again, shiny object syndrome, I tell her, hey, I found another deal. She's like, again? She's like, focus on one thing, regardless of that. Her and I were working on it, and we were at the standpoint of agree to disagree, where we're both going to disagree on different subjects, but why don't we come to a consensus where, okay, the returns look great, but insert here, whatever. And then we'll forward it to an underwriter or an asset manager to give us a fresh set of eyes to say, all right, this is what we're seeing. Then I can see what Mom sees, she can see what I see, we can both see what we don't see, and then we can build out the Ben Franklin balance sheet to go, do we want to pursue with this? Do our investors feel like they want to invest in this? And we go from their standpoint, from their shoes. Because whether it's $5,000 or $5 million, I actually made a post about this morning on Facebook. We want to make sure that whatever dollar figure we put into a deal, we want to make sure that this is a good deal in good hands. And that's really the standpoint that we come from, where I might be stubborn, but I know in the back of my hand, pragmatic-wise and business-wise, whatever allocation, whatever system that we have in place, I want to make sure it's a good system with a good team and a good deal.
And you also have to understand that we can also step out of mother-son role to business partner role.
Very much.
We actually can. We will have some heated conversations, not arguments, some very intense conversations, and he's right. We will agree to disagree. We don't fight, but we talk as two business people. I respect Michael's judgment. He's got some great ideas, and sometimes he just offers a perspective that, I didn't see that before. And I will tell them that.
And vice versa.
Or tell him that, and vice versa. So we can step out of mother-son role to business partner. Is there a final say? When we're really neck and neck, we bring it to a referee and somebody outside of our group to say, you need to help us look at this.
Tiebreaker.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah, when I coach syndicators, and I've been doing that for a long time, it's one of the things that I talk about is if you're going to have a bit of a committee, an investment board, whoever is doing it, and it's only two of you, you better have a third party who you mutually respect. And then you're going to have to really think through what happens is when you get outvoted. In other words, you may be tasked with making a project come to fruition that you actually wouldn't have done. And so we're not going to get into the weeds of all that here. Those are things that as you continue to evolve, you will face is how do you manage all of these different fronts? How do you grow the business of raising capital at the same time you're vetting deals and doing deals and managing deals and I remember having a conversation with a guy, Ryan Gibson, who runs a huge fund now, but when he was very first starting, and I sat with him and we talked a little bit, and I said, what's your main job? And he says, well, I raise capital and do deals. And he kind of sounded a lot like Michael. And I said, oh, okay, well, what's your partner do? Well, he kind of manages the operations and makes sure the back works. And I said, that's great. I said, who runs a company? He looked at me like, what? Like, who actually runs the company? You've described what your business does, and you've described what you do, and it sounds like you're doing your business, but who's running your business? And that was a watershed, that was like a light bulb moment for him. And at that point, it was just him and his partner, Scott, and their two spouses, and they were running the business. And I said, really what he was owning was a job. And he went back and to his credit, and I can take about 1/2 of 1% credit. He's the one that told me. Honestly, when he first told me this, I didn't even remember the conversation, but it was a big conversation for him. And then he actually went to work on building the company. And now it's 6 years in a row. I think the Inc. 5000 fastest growing, $400 million of equity raised, and I don't know how many billions of dollars, probably over $1 billion of assets under management. But it was that fundamental mind shift. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why I like to get into in these shows. I like to talk about the mind shift, the mindset, that humility. You guys, right, whether you know it or not, there's a lot of humility in both of you. And curiosity, right? You're curious. It's like you're trying to understand, well, what is he thinking? What is he saying? And you're trying to understand, where is she coming from? And what's in this deal? And what am I missing, right? Those are really, really healthy questions. And you'd be just amazed how many people don't ask them. They just contend for their point of view. So, Michael, I'm a guy who is pretty opinionated. I think things through. I feel like I can back up what I believe, and I get in these conversations with people, and every once in a while, someone takes me to school, and I realize that I maybe wasn't right. How do you handle that? Like, the idea that you fight, and then roll over and show your belly, or do you, right? How do you handle that? Because I think as a guy, again, this is maybe a sexist statement, but I think men tend to be more protective of their egos than most women by and large. Yep. And so don't mean to be too sexist, but those are just trends that I've recognized. How do you handle that as a young man who's, wanting to be as competent and confident as you can be, and at the same time, you got to be this humble person. You got to contend for what you believe in, but you got to be ready to be proven wrong.
That is a wonderful question. So I'm going to kick this off, and I'm going to agree to your point. I have a horrible ego, and I'm horribly opinionated. Like, if I have an opinion, it's cemented, it's rebarred, it's obsidian, it's bedrock, everything, where it's like, I'm not moving. You have to kill me off this hill. Like, that's it. Like, just, I'm not moving. But at the same time, I think what allows me to see the other person's point of view was Mom taught me that. I mean, she's been in conversations before where the other party is just going berserk, but she's, nodding, keeping her head cool. And then she breaks it down, and then she gives her opinion, how she agrees and disagrees, and she keeps her cool. And I'm like, that's interesting. Then she tells me, you need to read this book. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence Others. And I've probably read that book 3 times already. And every time, I'm sure everyone has had this before, where you read a book like a couple more times, you're like, I don't remember reading this part. And I have. And I realized that, you want to have the other person they want to feel important when they have a solidified opinion. And I want to feel important. It's like, this is my opinion, and I think I'm right. Well, going back to the same thing, agree to disagree. I have been brought to school many times. I mean, I have a good few scars between mom, some mentors, even some investors where they've schooled me a little bit. I was pretty humbled, but at the same time, I'm like, this is a blessing, because then I walked away with better knowledge of how to handle the situation, how to better present myself. And when I know that if I roll on my back and if I expose myself, if I know that it's worth it, and I know that when I come out of this situation, I'm going to be 100 times better, I'm going to do it. I will give in like immediately. When we're looking at deals and different opportunities, even conferences, where I'll be like, I want to go to this conference because blah, 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 blah. Well, no. And then, we'll kind of lock horns a little bit. And then mom will give me a perspective that I never even thought of, because she has 36 years of business experience, way more ahead of me. So it's like, okay, she's got a point. And I would like to leverage humility and being schooled by those that have been around a lot longer than me, that have endured, that have the wisdom and experience, because then I could do the same thing for others, where if they have a high horse or they have like a high, soapbox, let's say, I can also give them the same blessing of, hey, let's take a minute, let's break it down. So I would say I'm going to be transparent, terrible ego, very opinionated, but from just listening to mom and listening to my mentors and also being schooled many, many, many times over, it's the very foundation that I'd like to be on, where it's to agree to disagree, hear the other person's point of view, and just have conversation about it, and maybe come to some common ground. And I think that's where true relationships can happen, and potential partnerships, actually. So that's kind of how I've evolved over the few years.
Well, for whatever
Great
it's
answer.
worth, being a guy cut from the same cloth with a lot of mileage on me, I've come to the conclusion, in fact, I have, it's a working title for a book called Curiosity is the Cure. And curiosity cures a lot of things. It cures ego.
Absolutely.
It cures sales, right? Because if you're curious, you're going to learn about somebody. It cures a lot of things. It cures the fear of picking up the phone and doing a deal, putting yourself out there, right? If you don't care about the outcome, you're curious about the outcome, it just changes the whole mindset. So I could go on and on about all the reasons why. And I came up with the concept when I started, again, studying successful people, trying to see what the common denominators are. One of them was humility, and one of them was curiosity. And so I think you actually can manage an ego if you pair it with curiosity. And so for whatever that's worth, I'll leave that with you.
Absolutely.
Marianna, so we're going to bring this thing home for a landing. And Michael, be thinking about anything that I should have asked you that I didn't, that you think somebody out there who is an aspiring or active Main Street capitalist, particularly a young person, that you've already learned in life that you would want them to know. But I'm going to ask you, Marianna, the same question. So, you started out in life, you followed the mantra that Kiyosaki's been raging against forever, the model that is now broken because the economy that model was created for doesn't exist anymore, at least the way it did. And so the game is played differently. What have you learned since you were his age that you're applying now? And then what are you working on in yourself right now? Because you've just made this big transition and you're getting ready to step full-blown, full-time entrepreneur. The kid's raised. You don't have to be as conservative as you once were. Like, what are you working on right now? So what have you learned since you were sitting in his seat that you think is the most important thing? And then what is the thing that you are working on right now, and where are you going from where you're at right now?
To try to describe what I've learned from where he is to now is virtually impossible. It's just so much has happened. But I will say the big thing that I learned is that the playbook that I was handed 30 years ago doesn't work today. I cannot give that same playbook to him about investing in retirement, et cetera. So that's the first thing I learned. What I'm working on right now is first of all, yesterday was my last day at my W-2, super exciting. I'm going to be working with you as your chief of staff, which is very, very exciting because that's moving Main Street further ahead. But what I'm working on right now is to make myself a better version of who Marianna is. I'm not trying to compete with anybody else. I'm not trying to be the best at what I was in the W-2. I'm trying to be the best of what I can do. And in building me, I will build others, including my son, and build not just for, I'm very passionate about Main Street because I feel like I've been.
You gave me a standing ovation.
Yes.
I was up there.
Yes.
I was up there doing one of my typical rants, and you stood up
did,
and you
yes.
started clapping. I thought, I don't know who this woman is, but I love her.
You know what? I just feel like I got bloodied by corporate America. I feel like I got my nose broken. I feel like I got. I just looked at. Wait, what about the rest of us? You know, I don't have the government helping me, and this is probably going to be super controversial. And I don't have, what everybody else has. We're middle America here. What about me? What about everybody else that's out there? We're the backbone of America. We just got forgotten. Actually, we're getting squeezed. Mm-hmm. And I really, really felt like I was picking myself up off the mat, shaking my head a little bit, and realized that my nose was bloody. I said, wait a minute. I'm in my 50s. This has got to stop. It has to stop, not just for me, but it has to stop for everybody that's my age, everybody that's here in the middle that is blindly walking like an automatron towards the end of this conveyor belt called retirement. You retire and you just have a few years left and then you die. And I thought, wait, we need to start talking to people, and we need to start talking to his generation because his generation is going to take care of me eventually. And it's going to be his generation.
And that's true whether you have children or not. That's one of my lines in
100%.
Raising Capitalist Foundation.
100%.
If you don't care about the next generation because you don't have children, those kids that you don't care about, they're going to be the politicians and the business
That's exactly
leaders
right.
and the physicians and the computer programmers and all the people that are running your life
That's
in your
exactly
old age.
right.
You better care about them.
That's right. So that's where I am. I'm trying to better a system and working with people that have that same mentality of Main Street needs to get back up on its feet. We all need to get off the proverbial mat, shake our head, wipe the blood from our nose and say, wait a minute, hold on a second, stop it already. And that's what I want to say to other people that are like me, stop it. We're comfortable, this is good, we're doing fine. No, you're not. Because you're fueling everybody else's yacht. It's time to fuel our own. That's where I am.
Yeah,
if I sound passionate, I am.
Yeah. I mean, my thing is we literally, Main Street literally sends our money to the people and institutions and monopolies that effectively have oppressed us. And
Yes.
it doesn't feel like we're oppressed because it's a bit of a matrix. But if you really stop and think about it, it is. We'll go down that rabbit trail later in future shows. But obviously, that's the mission of the Main Street capitalist movement.
Absolutely.
And you're going to be a big part of
I'm so
helping that
excited
thing
about it.
happen. So, Michael, I threw a question to you, and I got so engrossed in what she was saying. But go ahead and answer whatever I asked you.
Whatever it was. He doesn't remember what it is either. I don't
No,
either.
that's fine. It was about young entrepreneurs and Main Street America, and I'm going to touch upon that too. I'm recovering from the education system, and I thankfully didn't take the college route. In fact, December of 2023, I pulled the plug on college and decided to use mentorship programs and seminars as my college. And taking everything that I've learned from high school and all the 12 years of my life being stuck in the education system to be modeled as an employee and to work until I'm 65, and now in this day and age probably 75 with a 401k that's just going to get me by, I don't accept that. And I realized that who else is suffering from the same thing? Because it can't just be me, like 8.6 billion people out there that have to be suffering from at least the same thing or something similar. And to my message out there for young entrepreneurs, go get it. I mean, if you're around my age, you have light years ahead of you. And if you stumble and fail right now, you can just get back up and do it again. If you're in your 50s, you can't really do that because it's going to take a long time to recover if you do recover. So go get it. If you have a dream, go get it. You're going to get bloodied. You're going to get bruised. But I have never, ever, ever seen someone become successful without bleeding, without crying, without sacrificing. And if you keep working towards that goal and that mission, I promise you, let it be God's will, it will come to pass. And that's again, going back to my stubbornness. I realize that this is the mission that I want to take on, and I will die on this hill. Because the education system, it's rigged. It's really rigged. It's to make employees, not entrepreneurs. And middle America and the United States was built on entrepreneurship and ideas, crazy ideas. And it's where we are today because of entrepreneurs. I mean, look at Ben Franklin, Thomas Edison, Tesla. I mean, they're entrepreneurs. Everything in this room has been linked to them. Why can't we do the same? And I think it's also the parents as well, and middle America as well, to teach the next generation, because I'm looking at the ones that are coming after me, and I'm praying. I'm praying a lot because I'm terrified. Even if it's just me waving the flag at the top of the hill, like out of that one scene out of Patriot, the movie, so be it. But I want to bring as many people along the way as I can to bring the mission out there that it's time for Wall Street to go on a fasting. And it's time for Main Street to get fat again, because that we are building this country one by one. We are the general populace. So it's time to give back, and it's time to plant our stake, plant our flag, and say, we need to make middle America great again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, preaching to the choir, I mean, that's what I'm all about. And I think right now, what's really missing, and I think we're beginning to get a little bit of it, is leadership. And I think that generation coming up realizes the glitter's completely rubbed off. There's no pretending that the old model works, that they believe, perhaps somewhat accurately when you only look at the glass half full or half empty, that they've been given a raw deal. And that's true. But I got a raw deal, and I'm older than both of you. And my parents got a raw deal from their parents, right? This system has been breaking down for a long, long time. We just happen to be the generation on duty when some form of a reset is going to take place. And I think we have both the right and the obligation to make sure that what rises in its place, and I'm not talking about reversing the Constitution or anything like that, or capitalism, but I think that there's a movement to say that because monopolists have been able to take control and leech wealth off of the real productive people to their detriment, that somehow the system of capitalism is broken. And it's not. It was corrupted, and it was removed from Main Street. The reason I titled this movement Main Street Capitalist is because I want to take that word capitalist and I want to make it Main Street again. And I want to make Main Street great again, if you will, because, Trump talks about make America great again. But to me, Main Street is America. And it's just ridiculous that we do real work and pay taxes and then have to live on what's left. And then we send our savings to Wall Street. We put it in the banks, we borrow from the banks, and we empower these politicians to make 100%. Rules and regulations that steal our freedom and steal our opportunity, and worse, create moats around the monopolists. And so what's going to cure this is knowledge, and the knowledge has got to be delivered in an optimistic, hopeful way through leaders, young leaders, Michael, like yourself. My mission, our mission in Main Street Capitalists is to raise up as many of those as possible, take the wisdom that we've gained in our many years and impart them to a new generation coming up, marry that to the innovation and the out-of-the-box thinking that young people like you have, and watch you go do something amazing. I've never been more excited or more bullish on Main Street, and it's when I meet young people like you, Michael, that just feeds that fire, that fuels me to believe that if I will get up every day and show up and pour out myself into young people and building systems and communities, so when they go out, to your point, and they get bloodied, they have a place where people get them, where they feel welcome, where they're going to get fed, not 100%. Abused. So that's what the whole Investor Mentoring Club is all about. That's what the Main Street Prosperity Clubs that we're assembling, that's what that's all about. And so I'm super excited to have both of you in my life. It was serendipitous for sure, a God thing.
Likewise.
But it's worked out really, really, really well. Thank you so much for being on the show, both of you. Thanks, Marianna. Really looking forward to our future together. Michael, you too. And how can folks reach you if they want to learn more about Ever Forward Partners, what you're doing, follow you, Michael, on social media? How do they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to reach us on social media or even check us out or even book a call or figure out, who are we about? And we also have a free book. You can go to www.everforwardcapitalpartners.com/contact us. and you can see all the pages there, all the articles, the deals we've done, the people we're partnering with. All of our social media is there as well, so you can see the podcast that I host as well, the Ever Forward Mindset podcast, and you can see all the guests we've had on there. For example, Robert Kiyosaki, Karen Hall, Greg Roberg, etc., and many, many more. So feel free to reach us, and let's connect and let's build together.
Yeah, we put you in front of Robert Kiyosaki. That was amazing.
That's
So
awesome.
check
That was
that show out.
incredible, yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. The Main Street Capitalist. We'll see you on the next show.